What is his level of concern right now about the potential rise of anti-Semitism in light of everything that's going on in Israel?
So a couple of things. We have not seen any credible threats. I know there's been always questions about credible threats, and so just want to make sure that that's out there. But look, Muslim and those perceived to be Muslim have endured a disproportionate number of hate-fueled attacks. And certainly President Biden understands that many of our Muslim, Arab Americans and Palestinian American loved ones and neighbors are worried about the hate being directed at their communities. And so one of the things that the president has done is directed his team, Homeland Security team, to prioritize prevention and disruption of any emerging threats that could harm the Jewish, the Muslim, and Arab Americans or any other communities.
Hey there, guys. Welcome to the channel. Guys, I think we're in very, very big trouble as a country. There's no doubt that anti-Semitic hate, they keep saying it's on the rise. Guys, it's not on the rise. It's just revealing itself. These people did not radicalize themselves overnight. They didn't buy all those Palestinian flags off Amazon. They had those suckers ready to go. And you know how I know we're in trouble? When Joy Behar is one of the only non-conservative voices of reason on the planet, at least in the Western world, then we're in real trouble. And I'll tell you more about the way I see this in just a second. But guys, first, thanks to everyone that's been subscribing, leaving such great comments. Really appreciate the support. We're building a great community. If you haven't already, like, comment, subscribe. Most importantly, share the channel and join us. So yeah, we're at a time where college kids are protesting for terrorists. Our second favorite diversity hire, Karine Jean-Pierre, she can't answer a simple question about anti-Semitism. And sitting U.S. Congresspeople still have proven false Hamas propaganda up on their Twitter. And Barack Obama and Joy freaking Behar are the voice of reason on the left. Let's get into it.
There was a glimmer of good news out of Gaza yesterday after 2 Israeli hostages were freed, but it hasn't turned down the temperature in the U.S., which is seeing a spike in anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. So former President Obama weighed in on it, saying that all of us need to put our best values rather than our worst fears on display by opposing any anti-Semitism and Islamophobia and anti-Palestinian sentiment, as well as the morally bankrupt suggestion that there's ever a justification to deliberately slaughter innocent people. So why is it so hard for us to grasp that here? Is it because the narrative is slightly different than what we're used to?
Well, it's so hard because we have propagandized and brainwashed our citizens for more than a generation now. Our university are just churning out people that are taught that Israel are colonizing Zionists and that Hamas are just a bunch of freedom fighters. At the same time that you and the media and our own FBI have led them to believe that the only real threat to our country is the threat of making America great again.
Because, you know, they always give us a good guy and a bad guy, and now, you know, these are just people, innocent people. So right. How do we come to terms with the fact that there are innocent people here who are in danger of being blamed for stuff that has nothing to do with them?
Well, innocent people always suffer in wars.
Yeah.
Always. You know, when we had that Iraq war, a lot of Iraqis got killed.
Yes.
That was bad stuff. But the fact that anti-Semitism is on the rise in this country makes me, I'm going to ask the panel a question. When they say that you can be anti-Zionist or anti-Israeli policies, but that doesn't make you anti-Semitic, right? They always say that.
Correct.
Yeah. Then why do people become anti-Semitic based on what's going on in Israel?
Guys, Joy Behar, she's having a freaking awakening, man. And I love to see it. I know she's not Jewish, but her husband is. And I'm reading a lot of articles in some pretty left-wing papers. LA Times, New York Times, Politico. They're all saying the same basic things. They're saying that progressive Jews, they feel abandoned by their liberal friends, their liberal allies, the people in the party. And the Democratic Party as a whole, they're starting to worry that Jewish voters, and more importantly to them, Jewish donors, are going to start to wake up. And, I can't wait to hear the panel's answer to Joy's question. She asked, why is it so easy for, anti-Zionism to become anti-Semitism? And I get that she's confused. She's a propagandist high on her own supply. Guys, it's because they really are the same thing, Joy. That's exactly why. Them being different or not reliant on each other and their mission is just another left-wing lie. All of the anti-Zionism your side has been pushing is only anti-Semitism masquerading as some sort of humanitarian policy or whatever to just get it past the masses. And I'm glad you're finally waking up. I see a pretty good red pill coming in your not so distant future. But let's see how the panel actually answers this. I wonder if Sunny has actually learned her lesson here and is going to keep her yap shut.
Do you understand my question?
I think they were always anti-Semitic. That's like...
Because let me just give you some 153 anti-Semitic incidents recorded from October 7th to the 18th. And there's an increase of 54% from the same period last year. So there are anti-Semitic incidents. And, and you worry about the children. The schools, the temples. We worry about black children being afraid of the police.
Yeah.
That a black kid, you always talk about your son, Sonny. And now these children have to worry. It's heartbreaking what's going on. But people have to speak out against all of that, all bigotry, all anti-Semitism. We cannot remain silent. I think there's a lot of silence right now.
I don't think there. I'm sorry, Sonny. I don't think there is a lot of silence right now. I think people are trying to figure out what to say and how to say it.
Well, I mean, she's right. I mean, there isn't a lot of silence. There are rallies and protests all over the country in support of bloodthirsty terrorists is all they are. So yeah, there is not silence. But when Joyce says silence, she means anyone and everyone that's not a conservative who should be speaking up loudly against this kind of behavior. She's talking about the silence from the left as you watch her friends and comrades really reveal themselves.
Yes.
I think people are very concerned about, they don't want to be misunderstood. This is one of the first times we're hearing from the press that, the Palestinian people, they've finally separated the Palestinian people from the terrorists, from Hamas. Yeah. This is new in this country. So we are learning how to say, oh, okay, it's not this or that. It's all this. It's all bad. Yeah. For all the families that have nothing to do with this. Nobody asked to be born Israeli. Nobody asked to be born Palestinian. It is so hard for people to figure out how to say what they mean because they're not used to it.
And because a terror attack causes so much anger and grief and fear, which is what terrorists intend to do.
Right.
And so what happened October 7th, I think, shocked the conscious so much that the reaction of most Americans, anyone with a heart, was anger and fear, and that's what the intention was. And so I agree with you, Whoopi. We heard a lot of that, but for the first time, I think, in my lifetime at least, as a person, I've often said my grandfather's Jewish, as a person of Jewish ancestry, we are now learning the historical context around the conflict.
And guys, a reminder to anyone who's not really paying attention, Sunny is a complete and total liar. As you saw in my previous videos, if you saw him, she didn't have any anger at anyone other than Israel. And come on, you're just now learning the historical context of the conflict. Your side has been brainwashing college students and viewers for 30 years. I mean, you mean to tell me that you've been brainwashing people without a full understanding, without an agenda? You're just doing as you're told?
And I think people have always been very afraid to talk about the conflict and be labeled an anti-Semite.
Well,
so in
tell
answer
people-
to your question,
Yeah.
I agree with Sarah. There's always been racism in this country. This
but it's
country
increased.
was founded,
54%
unfortunately,
increase.
on racism.
It was
And
given permission
It
to,
was
Joy.
given permission, and people have been anti-Semitic since the beginning of time in
Yes.
this country. I'm
It's
sorry.
insane. Unfortunately, it's true.
The Band-Aid has been ripped off, but now what we are hearing is this is a humanitarian crisis now.
What does she mean now? So it wasn't a humanitarian crisis when the people of Gaza were forced to live under the rule of terrorists and bloodthirsty ideologues. It wasn't a crisis when those same ideologues sent terrorists hopped up on narcotics across the border to murder and kidnap over 1,300 innocent people. It's only a humanitarian crisis now that Israel has finally had enough of the Western meddling, enough of the Western virtue signaling at the cost of Israeli lives. She talks about anti-Semites as if she doesn't realize she is one herself.
And
Well, it's both.
most
It's
people,
also a terrorist crisis because Hamas
Yeah.
is still in power. There's still likely Hamas militants in Israel, from what we're hearing, and there's still hostages being held. So it's both a terrorist attack and it is a humanitarian crisis.
Right.
But I want to say, so every year on Holocaust Remembrance Day, we say never again. And never again should 6 million Jews be murdered because of bigotry and hatred, and the world remains silent for too long. Never again is right now. There is a duty. My Jewish friends had to sit and hear people blame them for the slaughter of innocent Jews while the bodies were still warm, while they were still mourning their loss. They didn't get a chance to mourn what happened to the over 1,000 Jews that were killed before places like, and some of these were walked back, Harvard graduate students said, "We, the undersigned organizations, hold the Israeli regime entirely responsible for the unfolding violence." NYU Student Bar Association president said, "Israel bears full responsibility for this tremendous loss of life," one day after the attack that killed over 1,000 innocent Israelis. Now, Harvard walked that statement back and said the university doesn't stand by it. But that is what Jews have faced since before the Holocaust, but since the Holocaust. They're one of the only people groups on earth who their right to exist is constantly questioned.
Constantly,
And
yeah.
they have
Throughout
to defend
history.
it. And it's right, left, center. I've called it out when it's on the right, so I'm going to call it out when it's on the left. Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, they have dabbled in dangerous anti-Semitism at a time where I think of the young people.
Rashid will not admit that attack on the hospital came from Hamas.
Despite-
They have video showing it, but she goes out there and lies like Trump.
In this
All right. You know that she's pissed when she says you lie like Trump. In all seriousness, man, she doesn't need to bring up Trump to make her point. That is just, a member of her party is saying and spreading these things, right? But before the lefties in the chat come out and say they're just a few congresswomen, they aren't important, maybe that's true. But the silence coming from your side speaks volumes. People aren't so much worried about the crazy things a crazy congressperson says. The fact that these abhorrent things can be said in Congress and not one of you guys will call it out or even pretend to get upset about it says, honestly, even more than the crazy people even said themselves.
broke my heart just real quick. 57% of Jewish students on college campuses report experiencing an anti-Semitic incident.
Oh,
Oh,
Well, what I don't understand is the rage at also, you can say Israel has questionable policies. A lot of Israelis feel that. Jewish people feel that. I've seen that. They have questionable policies. Where is the rage when people talk about them Palestinians living in an open air policy, that the governing body intercepts aid? Whereas Israel built bomb shelters to protect its people, Hamas built tunnels to further attack its neighbors. This is what it comes down to is you are either pro-coexistence, which means Israel has a right to exist, and Palestine. Obama quotes in his speech that there have been instances in which previous Israeli governments made meaningful efforts to resolve the dispute and provide a path for a two-state solution, efforts that were ultimately rebuffed time and time again by the other side.
That's true.
What I would remind everyone is, if you look at your history, Hamas and the Palestinians, Hamas hasn't had a free democratic election since 2005.
And that deserves rage.
Right?
They are
Yes.
overpowered by a terrorist
that's not
organization.
Hamas.
And so the
Yeah.
Palestinian people have not elected their government.
No.
That's
they're
the one
living in
thing.
subjugation by Hamas.
Yes, and the
Yeah.
other thing
But they
is
blame
that-
Israel for their
Well, the
subjugation
other
instead of
thing
Hamas.
is there
They could be
have been
killed.
illegal
They could be killed for
occupation.
saying
I'm going to
There
There
stop
have
you
been
for a
illegal
sec. I'm going to stop you
settlements.
because we have to go to break.
So they stopped that because Sonny has not learned her lesson. Anti-Semitic Sonny Hostin was about to double down, and the producers, they know it. So what's she talking about? The other ladies at the table, they were trying to educate her and the rest of the mushy-brained people in the audience that Israel has made many attempts to hammer this out. Each time, in the past I'm talking about, each time they've been undercut and nullified by the leaders of Hamas, by many others in the world, in that region. The same leaders that do not allow the aid and the money that the bleeding hearts around the world have sent to their people for decades and decades. And Sonny says, she'd like to remind everyone that they haven't had an election. And Sarah was right when she tries to say, she says that that's not an excuse to allow this to continue. It's a reason to stop this ridiculous cycle right here, right now. And I agree with her. But I mean, really, this illustrates, I think, our country pretty perfectly, right? We have people so devoted to the cause, so mind warped from years and years of propaganda and just vitriol, that they can't even see past their own misguided beliefs as the world burns and bodies are piling up around them, right? They just can't possibly reverse course. They can't admit that they were wrong, and they can't see things from a different perspective. They just can't. It's amazing. And it's sad. But anyway, that's just my take, guys. I thought you'd like seeing this. Guys, let me know in the comments, where do we think it goes from here? And who do you think will win out in the end? The Joy Behars of the world or the Sonny Hostins of the world? Guys, thanks for joining us. Like, comment, subscribe. Most importantly, share the channel. We'll see you in the next one.